I think the numbers are still climbing, but a lot slower now. So we'll go ahead and get started. We want to welcome you all here to today's event, to our second town hall forum around the reimagining police. My name is Teresa Keto Dickerson, and I want to welcome you all and talk about what we're doing here on today's call. We're going to be discussing accountability and policing. This installment features the elected officials with the power to create transformative change in a way where Black and Brown Virginians are policed. The town halls, we dive deeper into the legislative priorities for the upcoming special session, which we'll talk about in a little bit. In talking a little bit about who we are, the Virginia Coalition for Transforming Police. The Virginia Coalition is a collective of organizations and citizens from across the state of Virginia who are working together with the mission to transform policing in Virginia. We are we put together a way to address the harmful policies to redirect funding to the community with a long-term goal of dismantling the policing mechanisms and creating communities that are not reliant on traditional policing systems. We convened a series of meetings with hundreds across the Commonwealth to generate a list of recommendations to improve racial equity in the policing and direct messaging in response to the protest against police brutality following Mr. George Floyd's murder. The result of those meetings in the Reimagining Police is the Reimagining Police package. This comprehensive list of legislative priorities police, excuse me, aims to reduce police responsibilities and budgets and transfer the non-criminal offenses to organizations that are better equipped to handle people experiencing mental health crises, emotional trauma, while also prioritizing the sanctity of life. The Reimagining Police package also aims to improve the quality of life for the men and women that are allowed to wear the badge and bolster the transparency and accountability mechanisms by placing more control in the hands of the community members in which they serve. We are urging our legislators to take these recommendations into consideration. And with that, I'd like to introduce my co-moderators, Latanya with Aubrey Unity and Eric Stamps, who is one of our community leaders in the area. So Tanya, would you like to get started in explaining a little bit about the questions that are going to be directly related to the police reform and why we're doing this?
Well, before we get started with that, I just wanted to take a moment to welcome all of our elected officials, taking the time out to speak.
I double clicked on it and I don't know how to edit it.
Can she be muted?
Okay, so I would like to take a moment to thank all of our elected officials for taking the time out to join us this evening and to discuss this very important topic around transforming the police culture here in Virginia. This is our second town hall, and we're doing this in preparation of the upcoming special session that is dated for August 18th. And with that special session, along with speaking about the budget and addressing any budget modifications, police reform has also been placed on that agenda. So our elected officials have been working very hard in creating and drafting up legislation and policy that will provide accountability, oversight, and transparency. Now, with that being said, I would like to pass it along to Eric, who will introduce each of our panelists. So Eric.
All right, thank you so much. I want to thank all of our panelists that are going to be joining us today. Just a quick note for everyone that's watching. Some of our panelists will be joining us momentarily, and a few may have to jump off to go to other meetings. But everyone that's going to be participating today, we have Senator Barbara Favola, that represents the 31st District. We have Senator Jennifer Boysko. She represents the 33rd District. We also have Senator Scott Somerville. He represents the 36th District, Virginia. Delegate Elizabeth Guzman will be joining us. And she represents the 31st House District. Delegate Patrick Hope will be joining us. Delegate Patrick Hope represents the 47th district. We have Delegate Joshua Cole with us. He represents the 28th House District. And we have Delegate Kay Corey with us, and she represents the 38th House District. I want to, again, thank you all for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for hosting.
Yep, thank you.
And we'll jump right into our first question. So, of course, with the uprisings and everything that's been happening all across the country, it's been a big focus on police reform and some discussion between defunding the police or trying to reform the police. But one thing that a lot of us usually don't get to hear, especially from our elected officials, are their experience with the police in their lives. So my first question is to all of our panelists that are here with us is what has been your experience with the police in your life? And I'll kick it off to anybody who wants to start. You can go ahead.
Okay. But
No, not that, darling. Corey, please don't click that button. You do yourself back, please.
Eric, you want me to take a shot? Okay. Can you all hear me okay? Got it.
Yes.
So first of all, I would say there's a couple different things that have sort of molded my views on things. First of all, I practice criminal defense. It's about 25% of my, maybe depending on the month, 30 or 40% of my law practice. And so I interact with people on a daily basis who have interactions with the police and describe them to me. Although I would say that most of my clients are atypical of the type of people that get caught up in the criminal system because they're people that can afford to pay me. And a lot of the people that are actually caught up in the system represented by public defenders and court appointed counsel, and they have a completely different experience than the people that have the money to pay me. But I have seen the effects of the laws we passed and what we do in the legislature on a daily basis and how they play out in court and how they play out with judges. I do felonies, I do misdemeanors, I do a little bit of everything. And it's truly eye-opening when you watch how it plays out. On a more personal level, I would say that if you were to ask my father, who's also a lawyer, he's been practicing since 1969, what he would tell you is that he thinks the reason I'm a lawyer and he thinks the reason that in part that I'm motivated to run for these things is an interaction that I had when I was in college with Officer Lee Shiflett of the JMU Police Department, who didn't like the way I responded and the way a couple of questions he asked me, and he decided to take me down to the JMU or to the Harrisonburg Police Department for further jovialities, shall we say. But basically, I felt like I got profiled because of how I was behaving and what I was wearing, and because I asserted my constitutional rights in response to a couple of questions, and I got arrested. And that really focused me very clearly on what our constitutional rights are and how they're abused on a regular basis by people who aren't always held accountable for what they do. And it wasn't anything big. I mean, I got arrested for drunk in public and possession of fake ID, but still it woke me up to the power that the government has over your life and what it can do to you if it chooses to do it if you don't behave the way you're asked to behave. And so that's a lot of what I think two things that I can say motivate me today in terms of how I view things.
If I could jump in real quick, I always share this sentiment, and some people have shot back at me and said, "Don't say that." But I always tell people that I grew up Black privilege. I never had negative interactions with police officers. And even having school resource officers, I've had great relationships with the SROs that I had, even to this day. Many of my school resource officers, I now represent them in the General Assembly. And it wasn't until I got older that I started to have interactions with police officers that caused me to become concerned. And more so as recently as the past couple of months with the protest and everything that's been going on. I became a behavior aide in the Richmond City Public Schools back in 2015, 2016. And I began to observe how young people in Richmond City schools interact with school resource officers and how school resource officers interact with them. And I'll never forget, it was one awesome spring afternoon. School was about to get out, and a school resource officer walks down the hallway and was like, "Hey, Trevante, your 18th birthday's next week. I got you. I got you." And I was like, what? This is the mentality that we're breeding in our young people. And then as we got to these protests that have started to happen, I was shocked to find out the use of force that our police officers utilized in downtown Fredericksburg, from the flashbang grenades to the tear gassing to the rolling of the beer cat down the street. And this is the city of Fredericksburg, a very, very small local city.
Looks like Josh's internet must have stopped. I guess until we get him back, would anyone else like to jump in on this question?
I'm sorry I joined late. What is the question? Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. The question is, what has been your experience with police in your life?
Well, I mean, I'm glad to share. Serval has his practice in criminal law, which he likes to tell me about, what he's encountered. I have had positive experiences in Arlington County. I have seen a police department in Arlington that has tried to reach out to the community. I live in a neighborhood called the Buckingham community, which is a predominantly Latino community.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we are.
Hi, Kay. I've seen an effort by the police department to engage, to bring in Spanish-speaking law enforcement officers to make an effort. In fact, they started what they call a Citizens Police Academy to bring in people from entirely in Spanish, to bring in people, low-income residents to talk about law enforcement, to talk about how law enforcement can be helpful, what their job is, how you can report different crimes. But everybody knows the statistics don't lie. They are what they are. Even in Arlington, you've got a large number of African Americans that are pulled over and arrested for marijuana possession or any other type of opportunity for pretext to pull people over, at a high disproportionate amount of African Americans, about 60%. And African Americans in Arlington make up about 10% of the population. So we know that there's a problem, whether it's in implicit bias or what have you is going on. Something is going on, and we need to take a look at the foundation of our laws to make sure that they are just and equitable. And I think that's what we have the process before us and an opportunity before us that we really haven't had before. I know that there's a sense of urgency to start dealing and start cracking away at the foundation of these unfair laws that tend to discriminate. Maybe that wasn't the intent. And I said this at the hearing yesterday. I'm not sure that that was the intent, and people might differ with me, but we know that that's the effect. We know that the effect of these laws that we have in place are disproportionately targeted at people of color. And that's why my caucus, House and Senate, and the governor are committed to taking advantage of this opportunity in a special session to begin to chip away at that foundation, starting at our laws where they tend to be unfair.
Thank you for that. Senator Favola, would you like to jump in? All right, just unmute your mic.
unmute it. Okay, there you go.
You're good.
One of the topics that's coming up is the role of the school resource officers. And I really think that we need to discuss this in greater depth than what we've ever had in the past. There certainly is a feeling that we don't want police in our schools because it may facilitate that school to pipeline avenue. On the other hand, could we, in effect, get enough dollars so schools can hire, the social workers, the mental health counselors, the folks who can really de-escalate, and then, if necessary, bring in what we would call a police guardian, without the expectation that some youth is going to be slapped with disorderly conduct charge, but in an effort to expose both the youth and the police officer to a more constructive process where an individual might see the police as an asset and not as a negative force in a young person's lives. And if we can't do that, if that model doesn't exist, then I have to say I'm leaning towards diverting dollars into the mental health and social work venue, and not putting state dollars into supporting this school resource officer program. Local jurisdictions can make their own determination. Local jurisdictions can articulate the memorandum of understanding. Local jurisdictions can ensure that the values of the community are reflected. But in my view, there are too many situations where the school resource officers have not been that helpful bridge, have not been able to de-escalate a situation, have not been willing to work with a youth and his or her family to connect them to resources. So perhaps that's too idealistic a role, and we need to bring in other services into our schools. So that's where I'm most concerned about, because I think it's a youth's first interaction with the police, and it's our obligation to make that race blind, to make it fair, to make it beneficial, so that youth gets on the right track, or that the youth actually receives services that he or she may desperately need. One thing I just want to comment on, and my colleagues probably have a view too, as I'm delving into this, I'm really finding that individuals with, we would say, differently abled, which is the term that is being used by advocates now, but those who may have a developmental disability of some type, those who may be on the spectrum, those who have a condition that would inhibit their ability to interpret the situation around them and to fully understand what's going on, are disproportionately affected negatively by police, and yet these individuals really did not understand what was going on, had no negative intent, and they're being, in my view, oftentimes they are not being diverted to the resources, they're being slapped with charges. And that is very problematic to me. That's very troubling, and I want to take measures to correct that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Senator Favola.
Sure.
The next question that we have for each one of our panelists to this evening is, which of the reimagined police package goals or legislation are you in support of? And that's for anyone who wants to take that question. Which one of these?
Can I answer first, given I got to get off the phone in 6 minutes? Or
Yes.
get off in 6 minutes?
Thank you.
Scott, why don't you go over in summary the Democratic Senate, the caucus platform, or I can do what you want and I'll pick up after it.
Okay.
Clean up.
Well, first of all, and I'm sorry I have to get off in 5 minutes. I'm a Joe Biden delegate, and we're having a Virginia delegation meeting tonight because we have to nominate Joe Biden and his soon-to-be vice president. I'm hoping Kamala Harris next week, and we have to go do that. And so, but and as Senator Favola pointed out, the Senate created what we called an ad hoc subcommittee on criminal justice reform to come up with our proposal for the special session, and I was the chairman of that. We had about 5 senators on it. We narrowed down 150 proposals to about 28 or 30 or so, which we're going to be probably announcing. We put out a press release about 2 weeks ago about it, and we got further refinements to it coming very shortly. But in terms of your priorities, which you all put on your list, I see you all have, I think, 3 priorities with some sub priorities. And I want to just first of all make clear that what Scott Survell would vote for, what Scott Survell supports, is different than I think what our caucus is advancing this session. And just so the first thing I want to say is in terms of what our caucus is supporting as priorities right now, in terms of what you all have on your list. You all have, number 1, to fund the police, reduce racist interactions between police and communities. Number 1A is reduce budgets. We have a proposal to create a Marcus alert system so that localities can have the option to create a sort of mental health first responder task force like we've done, like some other jurisdictions have done. I think that is in the vein of what you all are supporting there. 1B has ending programs that transfer militarized equipment to police departments. Our caucus is going to have a proposal on ending the purchase of military equipment and prohibiting that in the future. I've gotten a little bit of pushback about that because there's some equipment people think
here.
C, you have ending the school resource officer program. That's not part of our Senate caucus program, but that's something I support 100%. Scott Survell, state senator. I don't think SROs belong in our schools. They weren't there when I was there. My school was not, we had issues in my school, but we got through them fine without police officers there. But that's not part of our Senate plan right now. We have many members of my caucus that support it. 1D is reducing the number of justifications for pretextual stops. We actually have a really significant bill on that cuts down by about 6 or 7 different situations on reducing pretextual stops. Number 1, our legislation is going to say you cannot stop anybody for an equipment violation unless it's a violation of the state inspection. Number 2, you can't stop anybody for window tinting. Number 3, you can't stop anybody for loud exhaust. Number 4, we're saying you can't stop anybody for a bad license plate light, which is something those of us who practice a lot see a lot of. Most importantly, we have a provision that's going to say that you cannot either search a person's body or their car or their house solely based on the odor of marijuana. You have to be able to articulate a different criminal law that's been violated in order to get to somebody's pockets or their car or their house. And from my perspective, if we're going to decriminalize marijuana, which we just did last session, our caucus's perspective, if we're going to decriminalize marijuana, then you shouldn't be able to search somebody's purse in their house or their car for that. That's a big deal. And then the no penalty decriminalization of marijuana is not on our list. I support that. And I know Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy is bringing that, and we'll see if that comes through to our side. Then the next 2-3 things are about transparency, accountability, enforcement, evaluation. I talked about 2A. We have a whole bunch of proposals. The Senate, you're going to see a big comprehensive Senate police reform bill that is going to have a whole bunch of police accountability measures in it. I think once it's unveiled, you all will be very happy with it when you see it, but it basically enhances the opportunities for decertification. Right now, a police officer can only be decertified if they can break the law, they're convicted. This is going to widen it way up to basically if they violate an officer code of conduct or they use deadly force or they use force they're not allowed to. 3A, the Senate has a civilian review panel bill, which you're going to see. Qualified immunity, I'm not sure what's going to happen on qualified immunity. That's a really messy issue. You might see something out of the House on that. You will not see something out of the Senate. You might see something out of the House. that's a really tough one. It's really complicated. And I think that's about it on your bills, but I think we're going to make some progress on probably about, I don't know, 60, 70% of your priorities on your list, maybe more depending on how it goes, but I think we got a real chance. And I'm going to hop off here shortly, but thank you for the question.
I will just add that this is a process. A lot of what Scott talked about may require 2 or 3 sessions. We are really committed to making headway on stuff that is very, I don't want to say simple, but stuff that is so obvious and so contained that we can pass laws to correct it right away. And that's what we're trying to do in the special session, like prohibit no-knock warrants, prohibit the hiring of officers fired or resigned during use of force investigations, ban chokeholds and strangleholds, require attempts at de-escalation. These kinds of things are right in our face. They're on our streets. We know that they need to be fixed, and we're going to tackle those types of things in the special session. But there will be there'll be bills in the general session in 2021. We want to create a duty to intervene by fellow law enforcement officers. That's another bill, or that's another provision we're going to tackle in the special election. And we're also going to require localities to gather the data we need to understand what they're truly doing on the street, who they're policing, who they're arresting, if in fact they're doing racial profiling, and they'll have to collect the data we ask for, or risk losing a state pass-through of money. And we just think that's critical, because our goal, I think both the House and the Senate, is to change the culture of policing, to make a drastic change.
Yes.
So we are attempting to not only reform the way police are doing their job, but we want to create more transparency and accountability, as do you. We're going to work on civilian review boards. I believe the House has a similar proposal. The Marcus Alert, which I'm working on the budget language for, would provide localities with resources to really either do co-responding when they do police work. So a mental health worker goes out there with a police officer and is in charge of the site. Or there's a diversion model where a mobile unit comes. But nonetheless, there has to be some acknowledgement that many of the calls that go into the police force don't belong there. They should be going to a mental health provider, or they should be diverted to some other resource. And that's what this Marcus Alert is all about. And I'm working on the sort of study language and budget language. We want to restore equity to the sentencing process. We've got bills in that area. And we want to restore equity to the Virginia prison system. Some of those bills will come through my committee. For example, we want to have opportunities to actually release prisoners who are disabled or reach a certain age, would no longer be a threat to society. Sitting in prison is not helping them, not doing a bit of good, taking up space, being very costly, by the way, and they could go home, and we could have a plan for them to go home. So, those are the kinds of things we're working on. I just gave a very rough overview. Happy to delve into specific areas, but many of the issues that I just discussed, which the Senate Democratic Caucus is solidly behind, are also echoed in your sheet as well. So I think there's a lot of agreement on that, on the buckets that we're talking about. So stay tuned.
So from the House side, let me talk about process, because the Senate has done this a lot differently than what the House has done.
Yes.
The Senate has released papers, and I know Virginia Legislative Black Caucus has released lists, and they're all great lists. And I think the short answer to your question is all of what you've mentioned in your list of priorities are all on the table. But I think everyone needs to understand the process here. There's a House and there's a
Yes.
Senate and there's a governor. We have a special session that is different than regular session.
Yes.
You are not going to see bills, in my opinion, you're not going to see bills that will pass the House and not have the votes and fail in the Senate. I just don't, I think this is all going to be baked in. I think we're trying to meet with the Senate. We're trying to meet with the governor, try to figure out what can we accomplish in a short special session. It's a very short timeline that we have. It's a tremendous opportunity. The short answer is everything that is on your list is on the table. And I do think that we're going to do most of it, I think, in special session.
Yeah.
Whatever can't be done will be done, and I almost promise this, in the 2021 session, at least in the House. I think we're all interested in doing these things. There is a separate process that everyone needs to be aware of related to the Crime Commission. The Crime Commission is studying a lot of these issues: parole, mandatory minimums, expungement. These are some complicated issues that need to be thought through carefully. Marijuana legalization as well too. These are all things that are being studied in the Crime Commission. They have their agenda. They've set their calendar already for the off season. Some of these studies, I believe, will be ready in time for special session, but others will have to wait till 2021. I don't want to get into specifics like the Senate in terms of we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. This is really a process. And you also know that the House has announced the 3 hearings for the public to come in and talk to us. We want to listen, and we got our members doing things, town halls like this all the time. I do 2 or 3 or 4 a week, just listening to hearing what other folks are saying in terms of what we should be looking at. And so you're not going to see the House release a list and say, we're doing this. We're waiting to go through this process to finalize and to fine tune everything, to tee it up so that it can get through. We don't want to put a bill in that can't pass. We want to make sure we have the votes, and we want to make sure that the governor supports it. We want to make sure that some of these ideas, they cost money, and we are in a budget crisis. We're going to be cutting. So there's also budget implications as well too. So we're carefully looking at all these ideas. All of them are on the table. I can promise you that all of them are on the table. The question is I can't say 100% what will pass and what will get through, what the governor will support, what will support. But I think a large part of your agenda, you're going to see get through in special session.
I just want to comment. Thank you, Patrick. Patrick's my delegate, my personal delegate. But I want to say that the Senate has been holding hearings, Zoom hearings around the Commonwealth, and we started in June. So we sort of kicked into gear a little sooner than the House. And in addition to having these Zoom meetings with various senators and around the Commonwealth, my committee, Rehab and Social Services, and the Judiciary Committee, both committees have been holding hearings as well. And we have been taking comment from groups like yourself. And by the way, Kofi got your comments in. He was one of the first to get your comments in on reimagining the policing. So kudos to you all. They were shared with both committees, Democrat and Republicans on both committees saw the comments. And we're again asking for additional comments. If your viewers want to send us emails or have a reaction or want us to prioritize certain elements over other elements, please email us at public_comment@senate.virginia.gov. If somebody could put that in the chat room, that would be great. So yes, I mean, we are listening. We need to hear from all stakeholders as well, because we want these changes to take hold. So although the agenda I gave you was unveiled by the Senate Democrats, we have had some conversations with our Republican colleagues. We're hoping to get some support, especially in the prison reform area. There'll be some areas where we don't get support, but we're working to make these changes really transformational and to make them meaningful. So
Senator Favola.
police units throughout the Commonwealth will. we'll be able to implement them. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Latanya.
Just 1 second. What was the email address again? I'm going to type it into the chat box.
Oh, it just got in.
Oh, yes.
Okay, please.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, would you make a comment to all panelists and
Yep.
say the public_comment@senate.virginia.gov.
Mhm.
Please provide comments to that email and they will be dispersed to the lawmakers on the key committees in the Senate.
Okay.
And I'm sure we'll share them with the House. Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Senator. We really do appreciate you providing us that information. That's one of the things
Yes, thank you.
sort of encouraging is more public participation in this process. It's not just voting, you also have to participate in the lawmaking process. So thank you for sharing how the public can get to that. And we'll also share this in the notes and post it all over the social media. So the question that I have for you for Delegate Hope, can you provide us some hearing date for the public?
Yeah, sure. We've had 2 hearings already. And I know the Senate tries to one up the House, but we've actually one up them on these hearing processes.
Yes.
We not only want to hear your public comments in terms of your written comments, we also ask you to come and make your speaking comments as well too to the public. And so that's never been done in the history of Virginia in the House or the Senate. And we have an opportunity for people to sign up. Our next hearing is going to be Thursday, which I guess is at the 4th.
Yes.
August the 4th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yes.
And we have a great lineup. But again, we will have an opportunity for about maybe 15 or 20 people, public, to come and present. It's all virtual to do that. And so just like the Senate, we do value and listen to what the public has to say about the process. And then I think at that point, the House is going to be ready to actually start getting down and after listening to the various stakeholders to prioritizing and putting legislation into public viewing after that point.
I want to compliment the House. The technology staff in the House challenged the technology staff in the Senate to make it possible for us to take live comment on specific bills through Zoom. And I'm now told that the Senate staff have achieved that goal. So we'll be able to do the same thing the House is. But I have to give credit that the House staff really got the ball rolling on that.
Hi, Delegate Corey. You had a comment?
Oh, you can hear me? Because I can't frequently hear you. So first I have to say sorry about all of the technology problems, but eventually, since this is going to go on for a long time, the situation we're in, I'll get really good at it. Also, I'm sure you heard my cat, and he has very strong opinions. So look out for him. He's going to come to the next public hearing, Patrick. I asked Patrick if he would put the information about the public hearing up on the chat room so people can log in and sign up to speak as well as comment during the hearing. And the last 2 hearings we had, we ran out of time in terms of public comment and speakers, but if people will send their comments in, we distribute them to all the committee members. So it really is a unique opportunity, and the public safety and Patrick is writing it now, I think, and the Courts of Justice Committee are both working very hard to be available and accessible. So, and once the special session is over, we're still going to have this technology, and we'll be able to keep having public hearings available to everyone, even maybe when we're able to meet face to face. And I do want to comment on a couple things Senator Favola said about the SROs. Some of you may have read the letter that that I sent to the governor that an awful lot of you here and your organization signed on to, asking to have a hiatus in the funding for SROs. First of all, that just means the state funding. SROs are mostly funded locally, but it seems to me that it is a great time, since we don't have physical school, SROs have not been around and they're not going to be around, for us to look at the program and really figure out what we want it to do. Senator Favola, I totally agree with your goals, but I've been on the school board for a very long time, and we started more than more than 10, 15, we started more than 15 years ago with the goal of officer friendly in the school. And if you look at the data, it didn't work for anybody, even white kids. And it didn't work, especially for the disabled. It didn't work for minorities. I don't have a lot of faith that it will work, but no matter what we do. But I would like us to look at it.
I agree that we need to
have,
look at it.
I mean, we have data from across the country. It's not just for Virginia. It's not just Fairfax. And we do have to reimagine the SROs, just like reimagining the police. But I'd like to remind people, maybe most of you don't know, there is a security officer force that is employed by the school system. Each high school has at least 2 security officers. Middle schools have at least 1, elementary schools have at least 1, and they are trained and belong totally to the school system. And they should be a part of whatever it is we're hoping the SROs will do. And I am totally in support of taking what the 9.4, I think, $1 million that's in our budget for the next 2 years for SRO support through the localities and using it for mental health counselors. It's not a lot, but it will be a beginning. And one more comment about SROs. In all the years I've been watching SROs, and my children are in their 30s, I have only ever seen one woman. That's crazy. If we're going to have SROs, we need to have a little bit of diversity in every way that you can possibly imagine. Maybe some of the people on this call will try to be an SRO. So I think that's one of the most important things that we can do in this session. And thanks a lot for calling on me.
If I could just jump in real quick
to
piggyback off of Delegate Corey's, I'm actually going to be presenting a bill for the special session as it relates to limiting the authority of SROs and actually directing local school divisions to not sign agreements with SROs. As I told before I got cut off when the power went out, that I've seen directly in the Richmond school system the interaction between our students and SROs. And Delegate Corey, you probably be impressed to hear that here in Stafford County, the leader of our SRO program is a Black female, and she does a great job.
Wow, congratulations. I think you're unique in the Commonwealth.
But I think we do need to direct that. I actually had drafted a bill last session that simply stated that SROs were not allowed to enforce school district policies, and I never filed it. And so I should have. And here we are now in the special session, and I will definitely be putting in legislation to address this issue.
May I say one more thing, and then I honestly won't go on about SROs, but in the current code, effective July 1st, there is a requirement, although unfortunately there's no follow-up teeth in it, that school systems should review their MOU with SROs, with the police department, every 2 years in public and take public comments. The idea, of course, is that then something would change and get revised depending on what the data is. However, that's not specifically in the legislation, and that's one thing that I am going to file in the special session. And the other thing is that Delegate Torian had a bill that, forgive me, Luke, if you're listening, I don't remember the number of it, but it required reporting of data, the kind of data that we've all been talking about for police, the complaints, for the excessive use of force, and all of that to be reported to the state. It did cost a few $1 million in the budget, and I'm hoping that we'll get that unallotted and we can get that going. That's exactly what we need to do.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay.
I'm done.
May I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's always exciting to be here with you guys and to talk about issues that people care about the most, progressive issues. But I just want to, put a plaque out there that as I am labeled as progressive, I'm also labeled as pragmatic. We have to be realistic, as Delegate Hope said, on the things that we could accomplish.
Right.
And, I would like to start, for example, when we're talking about SROs, it's something that I've been against locally for many years now, and bringing now talking about more school counselors in elementary school, middle school, and high schools. It is very exciting to see that everybody is on board with that. I want to remember my colleagues that we need to secure that budget for them in order to reduce that caseloads. And now that we're voting on the budget, I hope I could find that support to secure that funding to get more school counselors in the public school. But then what is next, right? So we have my predecessor, Scott Lingenfelter, was actually the individual who introduced legislation that will require law enforcement experience for SROs. So since that day, it's when I became a huge opponent of that. And the reason is because we have a hard time having SROs transitioning from law enforcement and when they are working in the police.
Right.
And where they're working in the schools. And the reality is that they are not law enforcement when they're in police. And they are doing the same things that we're seeing in society, right? Trying to profile students who look like us, trying to put and send children to jail instead of allowing the principal to get involved on the assistant principal to do that. But I think that after we remove the SROs, we also have a bigger conversation. And that's about that we need not only school counselors as you address, but we're gonna need more social workers. We're gonna need more psychologists. Right now, as the system is, and we're looking at it, we have social workers and psychologists that will not work for one school. They work for 2 elementary schools, 3 elementary schools. So what children are getting when they need a support system, it's only 15 minutes or 30 minutes of their time. And that's gonna cost millions of dollars. So we have to make sure, that we are allocating, we're looking at the money correctly so we can deliver on those promises that we're making today. I remember the first time we had a conversation, bringing more school counselors to public schools. The draft that we look at the money, it was $26 million. So how we're gonna come up with that amount of money? So we decided to take a different approach to trying to increment those year by year. So that's what I would say as far as defunding SROs, to put more systems in mental health and to address mental health coming in. That's something that I believe on. I think you have on your list as well something about do not charge when we are for marijuana. No charges for marijuana possession.
Right.
What I would tell you today is that I would prefer that 2 years from now we'd legalize marijuana. So in progressives, we have to just take baby steps to get to our goal. And I would ask you, to let the data work for next. We just implemented this July 1st. Why don't we wait this year and next year to bring data, and we can make an informed decision and actually earn the support to legalize marijuana by 2022. So I wanted you just to stop, and let's look at what we can accomplish. And it's gonna take, we have to be realistic that we have been in a Republican majority for 26 years. And there are, conservatives out there. So let's make data-driven decisions when we're moving forward, so we can find the support that we need, not only in the House and the Senate. In the House, we don't worry about the Republicans. We are in charge, and we make sure that they, are in line with us because we have 55 votes. So, which is not, and I think that we are on board on everything that you guys are delivering. We are definitely, we believe that Black Lives Matter, and we need police reform. We need to address police brutality. And I would like, to also, because sometimes we have to be fair. And I would like to mention that I have met a couple of times already with the Virginia State Police Chiefs Association and the Sheriff Association, have come with a decertification program that addresses much more that you guys are asking for. And I want to give them kudos, because sometimes it takes time to just call out our own. And it's a very, very progressive program that I wish I have it tonight, but I don't have it right now. So I think that that's something that we need to work on, and they have their support. So we just need to get behind them. And it's an ambitious bill that addresses many things, because right now, according to current code, the chief police could only decertify police officers when they commit a felony.
Yeah.
We have to put systems in place when racial bias it's included, when racial profiling is in there. And we have to ensure that these police officers are not hired anywhere else, because if they are gonna be fired in Fairfax and then they're gonna work in Prince William County, then what are we accomplishing? So I think that piece is important to be addressed as well. And, you know, I'm on board with everything that you guys have been fighting for, and it's been a pleasure to work with you. And, you know, I want to thank Coffee as well. I know he is behind the scenes and addressing you as use of force. You know, use of force, it's a bill that I think that Fairfax County has a very good bill,
Yes.
a very good strategy right now, but I think we need to work what things have not been addressed or disclosed, because I've been in conversations also with the state police, and they do have to fill out forms that they have to then send to the crime commission. But when those reports are being sent, we are not presenting the race. And that is important, because community needs to know, you know, when that is being used, what races are being affected. So we need that data, you know, to be released so we can use it. Another important piece of information for me, for example, is language barriers. When these police officers are addressing individuals who don't speak the language, then when are we tracking that information? And do we have systems in place to address the needs of these, those English as a second language speakers? So I would like to see more. I know there are systems in place where they release that data once a year. I would like to see it more often, and I would like to see race, and I would like to see language as well. So with that, I think there was a comment about private prisons. You know, I think I'm on record to introducing legislation to ban private prisons in Virginia. And we have only one left, and we have to get rid of it 2 years from now. So the clock is ticking, and I hope to partner with you guys when we have to accomplish that as well. Thank you.
I just want to note there's a group, if I don't know if the Virginia Coalition for Transforming Police is looking for additional partners, but there's a group called Social Action Linking Together, and it's a faith-based group. It actually sort of organized out of the Catholic Church. They are very much opposed to private prisons, and they have taken this issue on and they're working it. So if you all want to find another partner, they could be very helpful. Yes, the acronym is SALT, S-A-L-T, and John Horsch is the executive director, volunteer executive director of that group. And I would think that perhaps, you know, you could coalesce together and really have an impact. I'm just wondering if there's another topic that we have not covered.
We have more questions.
Oh, sure.
I know we have about half hour left, so we'll try to speed this up just a little bit. I want to bring in Senator Jennifer Boysko, who's been waiting patiently. Thank you so much for joining us. So, you know, it's been a lot of talk and discussion about, you know, the different types of plans we have with the coalition. We have plans and goals that we are like. There's a lot of people around the state that want things to happen and happen immediately. But as Delegate Hope had mentioned, you know, some things may not get past this session. It could take a couple of sessions. So at least like with this special session and even going into next year, what are some things that you think can actually get passed? If not during the special session, but at least like in the next year? What are some reforms that you think that the House and Senate can find some consensus on and pass?
Excuse me, I'd just like to answer that real briefly, and then I have to go and be on a different Zoom meeting, and I won't get to hear Senator Boysko's response, but I know I can count on her as an ally and an advocate. I want to remind people that there are constraints in the special session that are not necessarily written. We will have some rules about how many bills people can put in, but special session is only one day. Even if we pretend and take it on to 20 hours, we still have to be in session that long. And there are not going to be any compromise abilities. If we don't agree, the Senate and the House, then that's it. We're not going to be able to go off and confer like we can at regular session. So we have to be streamlined. We have to be together in the beginning. We have to have our priorities together in terms of Senate and House, and at least understand the differences if there are things that we don't agree with. And I want to thank, I think it was Senator Favola for mentioning the issues that disabled people and children in our schools and outside have with law enforcement, and what a major issue that is. I've been working with the ADA and their enforcement branch, and trying to have a public hearing, a Zoom public hearing on that issue. So when I get it together, I will certainly let all of you know, because this is something that's going to take a lot of work. Thanks for letting me interrupt everybody. I hope I'm able to shut myself down. If not, you'll probably hear more from my cat. So thanks a lot. Good night.
Thank you.
Hey.
Senator Boysko.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. I've been in the car. I had a thing with the governor earlier today. I appreciate you letting me come on late. So I have been focusing, I'm on the Criminal Justice Subcommittee through the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. We've been working for 2 months on legislation. We have a packet of 6 initiatives that we are planning to introduce. I'm going to be carrying the bill dealing with corrections reform, specifically the good sentence credit, earned credit bill that Delegate Don Scott has been a champion on in the House. And he and I are working closely together. We're going to be offering exactly the same bill. And I have every belief that we will be able to pass it. I was told today I had a conversation with the Crime Commission Chair, Charnel Herring, that they're going to be considering that specific bill before we get to the special session. So they will have vetted it and hopefully we'll be able to recommend it. And I'm optimistic about our whole suite of bills, from the police reforms to the sentencing and judicial area to the, I mean, I feel optimistic that we're going to be able to do quite a bit. And I will say that my understanding is that the session might take more than a day. I'm certainly prepared to be there for longer than a day. I'll be there as long as it takes. But we've held, I sit on Barbara Favola's Rehab and Social Services Committee, as well as the Judiciary. We've had a number of hearings. We are hearing from people in the community, and I certainly have spent an enormous amount of time listening to folks from all different sides of this so that I get the best information possible. And I thank you all for holding this tonight.
Absolutely, thank you. We're going to go ahead and we're going to jump to some of the questions. Oh, go ahead, Delegate Cole. I apologize. Yeah.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, from my short time being in the General Assembly, I would say that the House is a little more progressive than the Senate. So when I saw the Senate's list of bills, I got happy, because I said, if they're coming out with all of this, we should be able to get them all passed.
Right. And here's to hoping, right? So we're going to go ahead and jump to some of the questions that we've been getting in the chat, both on Facebook Live as well as on our Zoom call here. And the first question that we have is from via Facebook Messenger from Mark. What role does the Attorney General play in prosecuting police? And I'll let Senator Boysko, would you like to take that first since you just got on?
Thank you. I think at this point right now, he doesn't have a lot of oversight. We will be carrying a bill that will give him a little bit more authority to do some oversight, similar to the what the federal government has to do. I don't have the bill in front of me, however, but I do know that he is hoping to have greater oversight over police malfeasance, and hopeful that we will be able to get that bill out.
And we are also talking about, and I don't have the bill language, but we're talking about in situations where lethal force has been used, there be an outside investigation into that. So it's not investigated by the sitting Commonwealth attorney in that jurisdiction, but maybe a nearby Commonwealth attorney would come in to investigate it. And in some cases, the Attorney General. So we are setting up a process where there's a much more independent investigation when lethal force has been used.
And if I can just add to this, because this is going to be very important to our process, and that is the decertification of law enforcement. We've heard from a lot of law enforcement that they're frustrated when they fire someone or someone resigns that's under investigation for unnecessary force, that they go just to another agency. And so we need some stronger mechanisms in place for decertification. Right now that there's a committee in DCJS that is authorized for decertifications. And they have only decertified, depending on who you ask, between 33 and 40 officers. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to expand the list that you can be decertified and make sure that they have proper representation on there. Right now, there are a 15-member board that is mostly comprised of just law enforcement officers and some Commonwealth attorneys. And so we need to have a proper balance of who's on there. But we want to give them more authority to intervene to make sure that that when there's bad cops, and that's bad for everyone, by the way, it's not just bad for the public, it's bad for law enforcement. They don't want bad cops either, and they don't want them to go to another agency. So if they either resign or they're terminated, that gets triggered, that gets reported to make sure that they get decertified and they can't be employed anywhere ever again. To your specific point about the Attorney General having more discretion, that's a new one to me. I had not heard about that. I know currently it's the prosecutor has the authority to do that. But keep in mind, when we talk about civilian oversight boards are not just ones that come into play and investigate these matters, and hopefully we'll give them some teeth. But they can also investigate the prosecutor, because the prosecutor could get involved,
right,
and the prosecutor may exonerate the police officer as well too, which we see that way too many times. So this civilian oversight board will have some oversight, another layer, if we can get them established in all localities. They'll have another layer of oversight to ensure that if there's a bad cop out there that oversteps the line, that they make sure that they're decertified and they don't work in law enforcement ever again.
Would they also have subpoena power as well?
Well, that's a great question. That's specifically to that. In my view, the oversight review boards is the centerpiece for police reform. If you can't do that, then you can't really do anything.
The way the Senate bill is currently worded, the Civilian Review Board would go to a judge and ask for subpoena authority. So we'd still have that process, but they at least would have the authority to ask to issue subpoenas. The way that's the current draft in one of the Senate bills. It hasn't gone through the whole review process, and I don't know where the House is on specific language, but our intent is to give those civilian review boards teeth.
Excellent.
If I could just add, I've got the draft up for the Attorney Generals. Whenever this is actually language from the draft bill that we've got, and Louise Lucas will be carrying this, Senator Lucas. So whenever the Attorney General has reasonable cause to believe that a violation that would be depriving persons of rights, privileged, or immunity secured or protected by laws of the United States of Virginia and the Commonwealth, the Attorney General or the name of the Commonwealth may file a civil action to obtain appropriate, equitable, declaratory relief to eliminate the pattern or practice. And so, again, as Senator Favola just said, these are works in progress, but we are intending to make real changes here that are going to be meaningful and to
make a difference.
Make a difference.
That's amazing. And that's really what we want to do. The next question we got came through the email. One of the best ways to reform the police is to dial back the drug war in a meaningful way. One way is to reclassify drug possession from a felony to a misdemeanor. That 6 other states have done this. Would you favor this?
Yes. I think that's an area where we're trying to really implement some reform. And I don't know if you heard Senator Sorvel's analysis, but the Senate has a bill that would prohibit searches of person or vehicles based on the odor of marijuana without probable cause for other offenses. And that's been a big cause of what we would consider to be unfair searches. Or perhaps violating due process. So we're trying to go down the path where people are not, we have a bill that passed last year that decriminalizes um, certain possession of marijuana. And we now have a study going on. But at the end of the day, we've got to get away from this I gotcha attitude in policing when it comes to what we would say reasonable amounts of marijuana. We have to go down a different path.
Thank you.
Can I add something about the Amber Alert? Because I have to disconnect in 5 minutes and I'm not working on the bill, but since we have people that are going to be working on that bill, I think one of the Marcus Alert. So the Marcus Alert is talking about, creating this force that is going to go and respond to mental health emergencies. What I could say, the problem, and I've seen it that this happening to my constituents, it's about people disclosing that when they are making those 911 phone calls, they are not being asked that question. And when you are dealing, with these situations, you forget to include that part of information. So if they might be some word into the bill, that when the intake officer or the public safety communicator asks the question, is there any issue related to mental health? If that question could be asked, that could help the process, because otherwise we're going to have systems in place, but people will not be able to know unless they are being asked, because the mental health information is not shared. It's protected under HIPAA law. So if we don't ask that information, then we can miss that opportunity to address that issue in a different way.
Under the study language that I'm working on the budget piece of the Marcus Alert, Senator McClellan's working on the authorizing language. I would direct the state staff, Department of Criminal Justice Services, to provide technical assistance on a number of models. And one of the models that's being done in Houston is a diversion right up front when somebody calls 911. The dispatcher is trained to determine through questions whether an individual is actually having a mental health crisis. We can determine that, or whether they're having a condition related to some medical situation or an alcohol abuse situation. So in those cases, a mental health provider would be dispatched to the site and be in charge of the site. Police officer would only go along to secure the site, but the mental health worker would be the site supervisor. So that gets to your point where we can do a diversion right up front. And so there's a little bit of assurance that a trained professional will be de-escalating the situation and making an assessment about the condition of the alleged offender. So yes, we've identified that as a model that the state will provide information on. At the end of the day, the local governments will decide which model they want to implement. But very good question, and yes, you can divert right up front when the 911 call comes in if you can get it right.
Thank you, Senator Favola. Real quick, because we're running short on our time, real quick, we have a question from the chat. What do you think will be the pushback from the Republicans?
On all the bills or some of the bills or in general? Is that
just in general?
Well, I think we heard some of it yesterday at our hearing when we talk about mandatory minimums, when we talk about trying to reduce the sentence for assault, a 6-month automatic in jail for we've heard all kinds of different examples of assault, throwing an onion ring at a law enforcement officer, shoving him or her, different things like that ruin someone's life. And you think about this in the context of someone who's has a serious mental illness or someone with an intellectual disability. They sometimes don't know the difference between someone coming at them to help them and someone coming at them to hurt them. And so they may be fighting back. And so you slap an automatic 6-month in jail on that individual and declare them a felony, that's a problem. And so taking a look at assault, taking a look at mandatory minimums, Republicans are going to push back on that because they're going to lump, some of the worst types of crimes you can possibly think of. But the fact with the mandatory minimums is that we should allow the judges to have this discretion. The reason why we have mandatory minimums is because we do have sentencing guidelines. And the thought was that these judges were going to deviate from the sentencing guidelines, and they're not. And so what's really the point of mandatory minimums other than warehousing people, locking them up unnecessarily for longer than they should? And so we as Democrats, we're going to take a hard look at that. And I know that is part of a crime commission study. Whether that will be back in time for special session, I don't know. I do believe it might take a little longer, but we're going to deal with the mandatory minimums. But Republicans are going to push back. They're going to go to their normal retreat place where we're not being tough on crime and we're letting all the bad guys out so they can commit more crimes. What about the victim? You can just see some of this stuff already playing. And so I think that's where you're going to see the pushback. But many of the things that we've talked about here today are very reasonable and very common sense. And I do think that you'll see some support from Republicans in a lot of them. But on the criminal justice reform areas, I think that you're going to see the pushback. That's where it's going to largely come from.
I would echo that, but I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I would just like to point out that the things that we're looking at are fact-based. They have been done in other states and other countries. They've been vetted and studied and proven to be effective. We are not pulling things out of a hat here. We are really working hard to assure the proposals that we're putting together are going to be successful and reasonable, common sense kinds of things. And it's just, we are working really hard to make sure that we know the facts on the ground and we are doing all the homework so that the proposals that we're putting together are going to be effective and successful and make a better Virginia for everybody.
I do think we will get support for sort of the Marcus alert. The police are telling us they don't want to go out on these mental health calls. They understand that they're not trained, and even if they had a 16-week course in how to deal with situations that may come up where an individual is suffering these crises, they would rather have diversion models. So I think that's one area we can get some agreement. And I think we can probably get agreement on more training and the de-escalation approaches. We're going to get pushback on the accountability and transparency. We're going to get pushback on civilian review boards and giving civilian review boards a lot of, real teeth. We're going to hear, the police, we can we can quote unquote police ourselves, just like every profession says that. We'll take care of our own. We'll be able to identify, the bad apples, and we just can't accept that. And I think to Senator Boysko's point, we are looking at evidence-based models that have yielded results. So let's hope we can all agree on the same goals, that we do want equity in our policing. We want a racially blind system. We want a system that will, encourage, build trust between the police and those who are being policed. If we can agree on those broader goals, I think maybe our evidence-based information can help us, but there will be some areas where we're just going to have to allow our principles and values to prevail. And we're just going to have to push some bills over the finish line.
I agree. And one more question before we wrap up. Now, Delegate Cole, you can jump in on this one, but what about the use of brutal force in jails and prisons? Where is the oversight when it comes to policing the incarcerated?
I don't know if I should take the lead, but I do want to pinpoint that Delegate Patrick Hope and I, this past session, put in legislation for a study into solitary confinement. We're also, I think what we need to do is everything that's going on right now is centered around the abuse of power and not being held accountable. And I made a tweet on Twitter last week that just simply said, for those who have never encountered accountability, accountability can feel like an attack. And so we have to be careful and make sure that people first understand this is not an attack on police officers. This is not an attack on the criminal justice system. This is an attack to make sure that people are being held accountable when they've never been held accountable before. And so we have to ensure that our friends and our family members, because keep in mind, these are our friends and our family members who are in the incarcerated system, that they still need to be treated with dignity, that they still need to be treated with respect. And so I don't know if there's any legislation that's out there yet. If we don't do anything this special session, I have no problem with carrying something when we get into January. But we do have to lead the fight that these are our friends, our family members. They have made some mistakes, but we have to make sure they are treated with dignity and respect. And we have to put an end to the mistreatment and the slavery of people in the penal system.
And I just wanted to add, a couple of years ago, I had a bill that would have done a study on different levels of force on inmates in prisons and jails. I was told that the fiscal impact was too high and they killed it. But it did get through the Senate. It was my first year in the Senate. It did get through the Senate. It was before we had the majority in the House. And, you know, I think we're going to have to bring that back up. I think Delegate Cole just brought up all the reasons that it's so important that we treat people. I mean, the punishment is that they've been taken out of their homes and they are being incarcerated. They shouldn't they shouldn't be subject to physical abuse on top of that once they're incarcerated. And I think we really need to make sure that we're looking holistically at the way we're treating our inmates.
Yeah, and I would just say that I'm glad you asked the question because this is not talked about. We are having conversations about protecting people in the community, but what about people in jails and prisons?
Yes.
There are cameras all over the place in jails and prisons. We know that there's mistreatment going on and no one talks about it. There's no oversight at all in the Department of Corrections. And I think we need to do something about it. And I don't think it's going to be in this special session that we're going to do it because it's going to be very focused. But in 2021, we have got to put some oversight over the Department of Corrections. There is nobody guarding the hen house right now, and we need to do something about it. We've got the Board of Corrections oversees the jails, and they were put in place. If you remember J. Michael Mitchell back in Newport News or Norfolk area, he was arrested for stealing $5, a candy bar and a soda at a 7-Eleven. He was in jail for over 100 days, seriously mentally ill. He stopped eating,
Right.
and he died. He should have never been in jail. He shouldn't have spent a millisecond in jail. And so we got the Board of Corrections now oversees the jails and investigates all these deaths in jails. Who's investigating the Department of Corrections when someone dies or someone's mistreated or someone's taken away their civil liberties? Who's investigating it? Nobody is. There's no oversight. And so we're going to have to create a mechanism for doing just that.
I mean, that's why these diversion programs are so important. There are so many people in jail who really cannot function there and are suffering great, I think, dehumanizing in behavior. So to Delegate Hope's point, we're going to work very, very hard. And I'm not sure what the best practices are for oversight of our criminal justice system, but I'll tell you, I am open to ideas or any studies that you all have that you'd like us to delve into, because I definitely think accountability and transparency is in short supply when it comes to the way our prison system is working. So thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, you all. We've really enjoyed hearing about y'all's commitments to the things that are like Senator Boysko said. They're just, some of them are just plain common sense, and we do appreciate you all working very hard for us. And thank you for that. We did have some questions from some of the constituents, and we want to do some rapid fire. questions for you all. So the next set is going to be, will you vote yes or no to the following bills that are drafted for a special session? And we want to hear from you. Your constituents are asking that we hear about some of the commitments that you guys have. So I'm just going to go get started, and we'll just sort of round robin it. I guess my screen probably looks different than everyone else, but will you vote to pass the bill that removes school resource officers from schools? I know we did this for a long one. This one should be easy. Delegate Hope.
Yes.
Cole. Yes. Senator Boysko. Senator. Yep. Senator Falova.
Yes.
Awesome. Um, thank you. Will you expand? Next question. I think we lost somebody, but will you expand the decertification to include excessive force and misconduct? Thank you.
It's in our language already. Yes.
Yes. Right. Yeah. I'm just reading the questions. I'm like, oh, they've already said this. Next question. Will you vote to invest in community services such as the Markets Alert, which we just talked about?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm personally very committed to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question.
Okay.
Will you vote yes to have the state caucus of action that will allow community members to sue for police violence in state courts without the shield of qualified immunity? Talked about that a little bit as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think the qualified immunity, there's a lot of interest in that, but that won't be done during this special session. It's pretty complicated. So we just want you to know we're committed to it, but I think that's a general session topic.
I have not heard that.
The qualified immunity?
In the
I have
Senate.
not heard that we're not going to do it. The
In the
House.
Oh, okay. In the Senate, that's not part of the package. So
But we're very interested in the topic. We're just debating it right now. I mean,
just
there was a Supreme, Patrick, there was a U.S. Supreme Court ruling on it. We're trying to weed through it. So
We can do it.
we can do it. There's strong commitment on the qualified immunity. I just meant to say I don't know for sure we'll get that all tied up during special session.
All right. Next question. Will you vote yes to have no penalty decriminalization and remove the I smell marijuana as the pretext for storming someone?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. I know we talked about that as well.
Yeah.
Again, thank you guys all for your hard work. We really do appreciate it. Next question. Will you vote to expand civil review boards to have a more meaningful oversight over the law enforcement, such as FOIA and subpoena power, which I asked earlier?
Yes, you asked that earlier. So yes, we're working on language.
on that
I agree.
Thank you. Last question. Will you vote yes to demilitarize the police departments and not allow for the use of rubber bullets or tear gas towards protesters?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, that was our rapid fire session. Thank you very much for playing along. We're just, Latanya.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all of our representatives for joining us and the constituents that tuned in on Facebook, on Zoom. We appreciate you sharing out your stance. We appreciate you sharing out the work that you are currently doing. If you would like, if you have email information or additional contact information that you would like shared out in the comment section or in the chat, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll make sure I will share it out on Facebook as well, so that people can submit comments and they can submit any recommendations, or they can submit any follow-up to anything that was mentioned this evening. I appreciate your commitment to transforming policing and taking a look as well as the Virginia Department of Corrections and providing that additional oversight when it comes to policing our incarcerated population. Now, with that being said, I want to let everyone who is tuned in know that you can also take a look at the Virginia Coalition for Transforming Policing's Reimagining Police package. This package is available on the Activated People's website, and that is located at theactivatedpeople.com. I will share the package in the comments, the link in the comment section, as well as the coalition also has a Get Activated workshop that's coming up on Saturday, August 1st. It will be on Facebook Live. It will be at 11 a.m. And we will go over how to contact your legislator and how to fine tune your elevator speech. Because as we know, these representatives are busy. So we want to make sure we tell our story and make our ask and in the minimum amount of time as possible, but make sure our point is gotten across. And I will share the registration link in the comments and in the chat section as well. And also, if you're tuned in, make sure you like the Facebook page, The Activated People. All the live recordings are available for playback after they are streamed live. So if you missed this and you want, or you saw it and you want to play it back, I recommend you play this back. Please visit the Activated People's Facebook page. A lot of great content was shared out. A lot of great proposed legislation is underway. Again, our elected officials are working, they are listening, so please submit those comments. And with that being said, did anyone have any closing remarks before we close out officially?
I just want to say, and probably on behalf of my colleagues as well, thank you for organizing this, Latanya, and thank you, Kofi and Teresa and Eric. You did a great job. It's important that you keep talking to us. So follow the legislation. We'll continue to connect with you. These issues are critically important, and we all believe the time is now.
And I just want to echo Senator Favola's comments. Thank you all for hosting us. Thanks for working on these issues. We have heard it loud and clear that, you know, studies and good wishes are no longer enough, that we have to make meaningful change, and we're going to do it. And we need you to stand right there shoulder to shoulder with us to continue to push this forward. And I think you're doing a great job of mobilizing folks. So thank you for your good work, and I hope y'all have a good evening. We have another meeting to jump onto, so I'm going to hop off, but thanks.
Yeah, the Senate caucus is having a meeting, so you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess I've got to run too.
Thank you guys very much for participating.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so if no one else has anything that they would like to wrap up with, we would like to thank everybody for tuning in. You enjoy your day and practice self-care.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.